ministers to present bills aimed at annexing the West Bank. Vice President Vance stated that the West Bank is not to be annexed by Israel and that the policy of the Trump administration regarding the West Bank will continue. Israeli lawmakers voted in favor of advancing 2 bills on annexing the occupied West Bank, an ambition openly promoted by far-right ministers in recent months. Meanwhile, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar has stressed that the government opposes the bill. He called the vote a political move by the opposition. Vance also said that during his visit to Israel, he made progress on the composition of the International Stabilization Force. He reiterated that no American troops would be on the ground. However, they would help supervise and mediate peace. Vice President Vance described the move as a political stunt and said it was insulting to him as well.
I mean, look, if it was a political stunt, it was a very stupid political stunt, and I personally take some insult to it. The West Bank is not going to be annexed by Israel. The policy of the Trump administration is that the West Bank will not be annexed by Israel. That will continue to be our policy.
Xavier Abu Eid, political analyst, is joining us live from Amman. Xavier, what do you make of these latest statements by the United States Vice President? He's expressed his strong disapproval of these bills proposed by Israeli lawmakers to annex the West Bank.
Thank you for having me here. Yeah, it's true. He's reaffirming a position that already President Donald Trump has given a few weeks ago. I think it's a very interesting development because so far we have been void of a U.S. policy in the region. We have seen changes of policies in the U.S., or at least of their discourse, for at least each 2 or 3 weeks. Now it seems that after the Gaza ceasefire deal was reached, the U.S. is trying to articulate a sort of policy for the region, and perhaps after having heard from Arab countries, the U.S. understands the importance of preventing the annexation of the occupied West Bank.
Also, Xavier, we do believe that, of course, the United States Vice President has spoken also about the next steps ahead. What is the way forward now after the hostages release and the body swap that is taking place?
I think that it's very important for people to understand that this is not the end of the conflict, right? I mean, the occupation remains, colonization remains. The Israeli forces are still on over 53% of Gaza. In the occupied West Bank, the colonization continues. And I think it's very important to understand that even though Israel has not made an official announcement of annexation, if we are to look into what the International Court of Justice concluded last year, we already have a situation of de facto annexation for whoever lives in the occupied West Bank. We all know that everything is controlled by Israel, and they continue to expand the colonial settler enterprise. So I think the future deals with the fact that the international community requires to have an end to the Israeli occupation. And I think President Trump understands that he needs a solution, not the biased solution that he pushed for on his first term, but a solution that understands also the interests of others in the region, including, of course, Palestine. Let's remember that so far, President Trump has not received President Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, in the White House. And I think also we should remember that so far the diplomatic relations between Palestine and the U.S. virtually, they don't exist.
Right. In fact, in further developments that we're tracking, United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio is scheduled to meet with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel as he travels there. Before departing, he commented on West Bank annexation bill put forward in Knesset. The U.S. Secretary of State said that move by Israel's parliament towards annexation of the West Bank would threaten Washington's plan to end the conflict in Gaza. He further said that the U.S. could not support such a move at this time, as it would undermine efforts to maintain the fragile ceasefire deal. His visit to Israel is the latest by a senior U.S. official aimed at keeping the fragile truce deal between Israel and Hamas alive after 2 years of devastating war that has upended the Middle East. Xavier Abu Eid, the political analyst, is joining us live from Amman. Xavier, let me begin by asking you about this proposed visit by the United States Secretary of State to Israel. What is to be expected in this key meeting between Marco Rubio and Benjamin Netanyahu?
Certainly, Oday, it's a very significant meeting because Marco Rubio has historically been one of the most pro-Israeli members of the U.S. Congress. Now, on his role as the Secretary of State, he has to represent the state's policy. It's not just what he believes as someone who was heavily funded by the Zionist lobby in the U.S. by AIPAC. And I think it's important that since he has already reminded Benjamin Netanyahu of the importance of keeping commitments, particularly by avoiding to declare an official annexation of the occupied West Bank, I think he may be visiting now this time to talk business, and to talk business particularly with what's required to advance into a second stage of the Gaza ceasefire deal. Let's remember, Oday, I think it's very important to understand that what we have is simply a ceasefire framework or an agreement, but we don't have a peace plan here. So I think what's important is how we can turn this momentum that has been built so far in the region in order to advance towards ending the Israeli occupation, which is the main need in order to achieve a political